Welcome to Winston's cellar. Relax, listen, enjoy.
Captain's Log 3968-088, Thursday the 13th of May 2230. Shore leave is almost up. Next voyage due to leave on 6-3970-088. Hear talk of a new species that made contact whilst we were away, and they have been highly recommended for the next crew. If they're as good as they say, then hopefully they're keen to volunteer too. Maybe a human crew density of 0.05 is possible. We'll have medical review their physiological needs to ensure appropriate accommodation. Captain's Log 3969-088, Friday the 21st of May 2230. Good gods, there are so many of them. With the number of human volunteers, we'd almost be able to crew the whole ship without any other species. They're just so eager to leave the dock. If it weren't against regulation, I'd offer less pay. Whatever. I've had habitations start preparing for a 10% human density. Can't risk anything too disproportionate. Reading up on the physiological analysis, they almost don't seem special. Not as strong as the Corridish, but strong enough to cover anything without heavy lifting equipment. Decent learners. Almost as good as the Quaidine without the need for hyperhumidification masks. Upper epidermis and most of anatomy composed of phospholipid bilayer, creating a resilient yet flexible protective barrier. Dr. Kwand has been telling me wondrous tales of them working for entire cycles straight without injury, but I suspect this is like the story about a human eating an aeromotive vessel. Slightly slow reaction time, it seems. Nice that they aren't jumpy or skittish, but do I really want them around time-sensitive engine controls? 10% will be plenty. Captain's Log 3970-088, Saturday the 29th of May 2230. Left dock earlier this cycle. These humans are difficult to work with sometimes. Don't get me wrong, you tell them to get a job done and they do it, but they do it however they feel like it, regardless of how it's been done before. One of the workers in the loading bay reduced inertial dampeners to 99.97% efficiency and shut off artificial gravity in Section 43 as we were undocking and just floated several hundred tons of cargo from the elevator to the cargo rack. If they hadn't gotten the job done before all the other crews, I'd be fuming. Couldn't even fault them on their logic, as it saved time and energy, and they had a plan for every eventuality. I've had maintenance put massive warning signs up to make sure they don't do it again, but I've told them to keep the yellow paint handy. Captain's Log 3982-088, Wednesday the 1st of September 2230. At the first coasting stage of the voyage now, plenty of time to actually meet some of the crew. Their language is so chaotic at times, using terms of bodily functions as modifiers of intensity. Incident log at 04 during morning meal. Forosh crew member found in agitated state with all 4 pupils dilated, 98%. Reportedly consumed human beverage brewed from beans containing powerful stimulant. Has been restrained in medical and given a heavy dose of tranquilizer. Will remain restrained until heart rates are below 500. Warning signs painted on several relevant human beverages, roughly 30% of human beverage stock. Incident log at 09 during the late meal. Several human crew members contaminated a dining compartment with highly concentrated capsaicin, amongst other substances, causing several Hardarians severe skin rash and one Quaidine to almost asphyxiate. In light of the fact that they are somehow consuming these substances, warning signs have been put in place and dedicated dining compartments for humans have been allocated to ensure this doesn't happen again. The human responsible has been reprimanded. Incident log at 10, crisis averted. Human crew attempting to ingest ethyl alcohol dissolved in dihydrogen monoxide were quickly ordered to stop and only do so in human dining compartments as a Guiladani crew member had already begun to dissolve. Will require psychiatric care for remainder of voyage. Warning signs dispensed to crew to place on all relevant containers. Incident log at 00, technically tomorrow, but I'll put it here. Human crew partaking in cultural experience of visual and auditory stimulus representing fiction for entertainment. One NORAD crew member was invited to join them, now in psychiatric care with Guiladani crew member. Title of entertainment noted as Alien. Captain's Log 3986. 088, Friday, the 1st of October, 2230. I'm not sure how it happened. Either 2 humans saved the entire ship, or recklessly endangered themselves in a hazardous event while subsequently torturing 2 Hardarians and a Korodish. From the reports, an explosion in ion manifold containment field 13 led to a titanium fire which caused the temperature in Deck 87 to rise to 330 Kelvin and caused enough fragmentation to incapacitate all crew members except one human, to be explained later. Normal procedure would be to isolate the deck and vent all atmosphere to avoid risking the remainder of the ship. However, 2 human crew members, one of which was in the room during the explosion, were able to remove all injured crew members from the affected deck, including the Korodish, who was trapped under half a ton of structural support, and perform a medical procedure apparently called cauterization to prevent the injured crew from dying due to loss of bodily fluid. According to medical, this procedure did indeed allow them to survive until appropriate medical equipment was available. All crew members currently in medical undergoing dermal regeneration. 2 Hardarians and a Korodish now in psychiatric care. First aid handbooks now updated. As soon as I figure out what the warning sign should be, it will be painted in all 19 manifold decks. Captain's log 3986-088. Saturday, the 2nd of October, 2230. Incident log at 06. Human crew members from last cycle's manifold explosion attempting to leave medical bay citing boredom as a reason. Medical informed me that humans have an incredibly fast rate of regeneration even without medical equipment, and thus should be fine to walk. Human crew member ordered to remain in medical. Jokingly provided with elastic polymer sphere for entertainment by Dr. Kwan's assistant. Incident log at 06. Elastic polymer sphere lodged in Dr. Kwan's assistant's splanch requiring surgical removal. Not returned to human crew member. Incident log at 08. Group of human crew members found on viewing deck 65 with radiation shield lowered in the 320 to 400 nanometers wavelength range, apparently in an attempt to darken their skin. After a brief discussion with medical, crew members were informed, "Oh my god, fine, we literally don't even care anymore, just turn it back on when you're done." Captain's log 3986-088, Sunday, the 3rd of October, 2230. Informed that humans have now been categorized as hyper-specialized pursuit predators. After some brief research into what this means, I have decided that I am not sleeping tonight. Tillis laughed under its breath, its bulbous head undulating its tentacles in amusement. A pinch of this, a dash of that, careful to maintain seals on the PPE. A warning tone at the hazardous materials lab door heralded the entry of Morv, the hulking Uluian shuffling along on his 18 stumpy legs, covered head to toes in heavy white protective gear. He sighed as he witnessed the maniac concoctions of Tillis. "Hell you doin', Till?" "A miracle of science, my dear Morv," Tillis chimed in stereo from their 2 heads, peppery with cheer and mirth. "A pushing of boundaries, an investigation into the limits of the known world. You look like you're making something that'll kill everyone on this ship." "All but one," Tillis laughed wildly as they put the tray of concocted discs into a heated solidifier. "According to protocols, these toxins need to be seared at high heat to unlock their full deadly glory. Watch with me, dear friend, as we dance dangerously upon the precipice of destruction, boldly in the name of science." Morv grunted as he observed the solidifier in action, watching the pasty toxin concoctions stabilize into discs. The warning tone chimed again as Kevin entered the lab. Kevin was a human, bipedal with only 2 arms. Kevin was wearing no PPE as he sauntered into the hazardous materials lab. "Hey guys, just came to tell you the gravball game got moved to 1400. Damn, what smells so good. Tillis is making something. A terror upon the senses, a nightmare to the sanity of weak minds." Tillis laughed merrily, their female head giving Morv a knowing wink. "What say you to a field sample?" Kevin looked around. "What kind of field sample?" Tillis pulled the tray of toxin discs from the solidifier. "These are made from the dried and ground husks of 4 different toxic plants, Kevin. Their agency amplified tenfold by the addition of lethal amounts of primary elements, including, but certainly not limited to, sodium and chlorine." Kevin took a toxin disc in his bare, unprotected hand, sniffed it, and immediately ate the entire toxin disc in a single bite. Morv and Tillis watched in horror and delight respectively, as Kevin amicably chewed and swallowed the disc. "Tastes good. Can I have more, or are these to share?" "More? Share?" Morv dropped his jaw in astonishment. Those were poison, Kevin. I saw Tillis put ground Nuvarian prairie grasses and jellied exoxolot fruit into it. Kevin thought for a moment, grabbing 2 more toxin discs to munch on. I think we just call these cookies back home, Morv. Chocolate chip old childhood favorite. You people feed that stuff to kids? Morv paled and trembled beneath his PPE at the thought. Tillis was on the floor laughing their tail off. Kevin shrugged and went to a vat on the wall, grabbed a cup and filled it with a clear liquid. Before Morv could protest, Kvin washed the whole cup down. Normally I'd take milk with these, but water will do. Kevin, that was oxygenated hydrogen. It's deadly. Deadly flavorless, maybe. Kevin tossed the cup onto a counter and waved idly as he went into the interstitial zone and activated the regulation-mandated cleansing spray. Gravball at 1400, yeah? Morv stood rooted in place, stammering insensibly as Tillis continued their ceaseless manic laughter. The midday chime signaling ship-wide lunch break intoned throughout engineering, and Kevin the Who Man breathed a sigh of relief. He stripped off his gloves, disposed of them down the incinerator chute, and made his way to the galley, hoping to beat the Synther lines. The Synther lines were, as always, a nightmare. With 17 different species represented aboard the C-sharp, a minor D, minor F major, that being the only way Kevin had of pronouncing Tanaran song speech. Each participant had to reset the synthers to accommodate their own digestion systems and food preferences one by one. And stars help you if somebody was feeling indecisive that day. A low rumbling shuffle behind Kevin had him turn to face Morv. Kevin waved. How you holding up, Morv? The Uluian grunted grumpily, feeling like an idiot but otherwise fine. Tillis really pulled one over on you, huh? Morv scoffed. I don't know what trickery they did. I could have sworn I saw them make those cookie things out of raw poison. Kevin laughed as they moved forward in the line. No tricks, Morv. Who men and who women just don't work the same as most other people. So that wasn't a lie. You just drank straight oxygenated hydrogen? Kevin shrugged. Yeah, on our world, H2O is a requirement for life. All life on our world originated from great oceans of it. You have oceans of H2O? Yeah, and a lot of it is saltwater, sodium chloride. Morv made a retching gesture in response. I can't even imagine that. It's in the air too, clouds of it in the sky, droplets thick in the air on humid days. We think it's why nobody made contact with our world for so long. The entire atmosphere was poison to the rest of the galaxy. Kevin and Morv made their way up to the Synther, and Kevin got a grin on his face. Hell, I'm pretty sure we're poison too. Let me show you. Kevin set the Synther to Who and a selection of foodstuffs arranged on the screen. He tapped the icon for soda and pulled up a list of ingredients. Here, look at this. Morv skimmed the ingredients list, his eyes shooting open in shock. H2O and sucrose? You people eat sucrose? We add it to everything, makes it taste sweeter. Kevin tapped the hot dog and the soda, and the foodstuffs materialized in the Synther. We have to be careful how we do things. Since we eat stuff that's toxic to the rest of the galaxy, we tend to secrete some toxins too. That's why the gloves. What gloves? Kevin pulled a pair of gloves out of his back pocket. Gotta wear these whenever I touch equipment. Our skin oil is reactive to some species, especially Forvani. Morv mused a second as they made their way to a lunch table. Forvani, huh? Like Ting? Morv gestured to the Synther line they had just left, at the round, billowy bubble of contained jelly hovering in queue. Ting caught the look and waved a tendril in greetings. Kevin waved back politely. Oh yeah, if I don't wear gloves and Ting uses a console after me, it'll weaken his surface tension. Burns like hell. Morv looked thoughtful a moment, then looked at the Synther line they had just vacated. Weren't your gloves in your pocket, though? Kevin's face went pale, and before he knew it, Ting was screaming. The Forvani flew around the ceiling in hysterics, jiggling in anger as he held an oozing limp tendril. Security and medic personnel pushed through the crowds, laying Ting flat on a clean surface while they applied neutralizing agents to his tendril. They carried him off as he was still screaming as loud as his membrane vibrations would allow. Kevin, you titanic asshole! When I get back on deck, you better watch your ass! Kevin shrunk down in humiliation and tried to eat the remainder of his hot dog and soda quietly. Morv chuckled as he drank deep from his steaming mug of cyanide. Never liked him anyway. He cheats at Gravball. I want you to know that you are speaking before the highest panel. It is a matter of absolute urgency that our Defense Force leadership learns of what happened as soon as possible. Yeah, okay, the being on the view screen said with a faltering voice. If it was caused by the prospect of speaking before people that important or the recent happenings, it was hard to tell. The room for the highest panel wasn't opulent. It was actually rather small and not really befitting the wide-reaching decisions being made there. But its use had grown from history and was deeply embedded in tradition. So the 12 beings of 5 different species sitting therein had to cram themselves at one end of the table for all of them to see the antique 2D view screen. One of the 12, the same who had spoken before, addressed the being on the other end of the screen. Please verify you are responsible for a scientific outpost, population circa 1,000. That's correct, the base commander replied. You said there were no casualties? Yes, there were none. That never happened before. How did you do it? It wasn't us. We asked humans for help. Humans? The speaker repeated the unfamiliar word. The being on the view screen made an obvious gesture of embarrassment. I mean species ZZ9. There was murmuring amongst the 12 as information about that species came up on the small handheld screens in front of them. ZZ9 was an uncontacted species incapable of interstellar travel. Even their first interplanetary expedition, if one could call a visit to the moon of their own planet that, was only recently and had no larger-scale follow-ups. The old table creaked as the speaker leaned forward, their tone incredulous. You mean to say that it was species ZZ9 that successfully defended your sector against a warband? No, they wouldn't be capable of that. And as of now, they are still uncontacted and know nothing about what happened. I meant to say we had asked specific individuals for help. 4, to be precise. You're not making sense, someone else of the 12 chimed in. We were about to perish, or worse, to be taken as slaves. We were desperate, so we tried to exploit an extraordinary trait of species ZZ9 that we had encountered and that was reinforced in their culture to a ridiculous degree. See, they were interrupted, but you had been told to evacuate. Why did you not just leave? There were several changes of emotion displayed by the being on the screen. They remained with an expression of confusion. We had sent an emergency aid request after we had first spotted the incoming fleet. We had no means to evacuate. This revelation caused some movement as most of the 12 hastily requested details of this request onto their handheld devices. There followed a minute of deafening silence as all of them learned that their call for aid had been denied. Some officials had deemed the risk of losing whatever ships sent there unacceptable in the face of the dwindling number of military forces. Shall I continue? The base commander asked. That borderline subordinate act ripped the attention of the 12 away from their devices. The speaker was the one to reply, yes, explain this special trait of species ZZ9. They say that everything is a weapon to a human. This is what we utilized by sending them to an orbital debris field around Nareen, a gas giant, and the 3rd planet in our system. How did you go about that? We gave them... No, the base commander was interrupted again, though the speaker made an apologetic gesture as they continued with, please start at the beginning. To which criteria did you select 4 of these humans? How did you establish preliminary communication? The being on the view screen made a quick glance to the side and again displayed embarrassment. There was no time. The crew of the system hopper we sent to Earth just looked for individuals in remote locations which were questioned for willingness to help. I want to add that I alone take full responsibility for his breach of first contact protocol. And you found such individuals? We did. The first few either panicked, declined, or both. They were subsequently sedated and released safely. But the crew came upon a traveling ground vehicle with 4 humans inside that agreed to the request. They were then brought back. The speaker remained silent, and one other of the 12 took the word to ask, did they not object to this monumental task? And they had no problems with learning about our existence and being brought away from their planet? The crew reported them to be only mildly troubled by their presence. I learned later that the 4 humans had held some military functions in their past and were apparently specially trained to cope with unexpected developments. They had also been given a brief explanation of our situation beforehand, so they knew what their help would entail. Though the crew did mention the need for sedation as one of the 4 had to be knocked out before takeoff on the insistence of the other 3, Other than that, the group seemed to handle everything just fine, with one even reported to be very enthusiastic about the spaceflight. And then you brought them to the debris field? The speaker took over, questioning again. No, they had been brought to the base where we handed them everything our head engineer thought could be usable to them. I will make sure to send you the full list of the tools, devices, gadgets, and items the humans had been given. What they did make the best use of were the engineer helper head circlets, as these— Wait, they are biologically compatible? The expression made by the being on the view screen was one of mild frustration. Our research data shows a number of similarities in our respective species' brain physiologies. It seems we are similar enough that at least this kind of cerebral interface works on them. But the more impressive part is what came after. Someone else from the 12 loudly butted in. This is a supremely dangerous development. These devices are supposed to be species-specific, and they contain highly sensitive information about the workings of our technology. You cannot just put them into the hands of some underdeveloped fools, especially if it turns out that they are capable of using them. I am. The base commander trailed off into silence. After a deep breath, they began anew. For us, it was about survival. It was also about protecting the system of the humans, as they would likely have been a subsequent target. We just used everything we had available to give us and them at least a chance. Honorable as your intentions may have been, this will leave a considerable mark on your personal record. I would go so far as to— The speaker stopped the agitated political leader by motioning for silence. Then they addressed the screen. Please tell us what happened next. Well, amongst those 4 humans was a pre-established hierarchy. It was their leader that took over all correspondence, and they also put together a plan based on the information about the enemy we were able to provide and the available means for defense. They asked to be given a ship capable of bringing them and the equipment they had chosen to the orbital debris field at Nareen. What kinds of armaments can be found there? What did the humans make of them? The base commander replied, none and nothing. The debris field is the result of a failed gas mining operation, and it remained a dumping ground for leftovers of interstellar development efforts by various civilian cooperatives for some time, until laws were passed that stopped such doings. The group leader told us they weren't looking for firearms, going so far as to even refuse to take with them the meager weaponry we offered. No weapons? How did they put up any sort of defense then? Unfortunately, I cannot say with certainty what they did exactly, nor how they accomplished to make it work. But I will tell you what I saw. They paused as they took another deep breath. With the knowledge made available by the engineer helpers, they went on to revive an ancient long-range colony vessel in an astonishingly short amount of time. Using its resource-extracting capabilities, they then began removing whole subsystems from other, equally deprecated spaceships. For a moment, the being on the screen averted their gaze from the camera. Their tone shifted to one of disbelief as they said, for some reason, through all of their scrapping work, they were broadcasting music on low-range subspace emitters. From what I know about their homeworld, it was definitely an assortment of pieces from there. I think it could have been battle. Please do not digress. The speaker pulled them back. Yes, sorry. They composed themselves and recounted, we watched them rip out rift engines that were not only likely to be defective, but also generations behind our current technology. They additionally seemed to be determined to collect spent power plants and computer cores I would call nothing else but relics. All of these and more they brought into their ancient colony ship to create, well, something. The others of the 12 had been listening intently up to that point. But one then blurted out a question. What was it? What did they make? I honestly have no idea. Before they finished the external refits on their ship, we lost subspace communication and thus sight of what the humans were doing. I thought at first it was the doing of the warband that had come close to entering space within our system, but I quickly learned it was not as it cleared up again, without any idea what would happen. As we had no insight in the plan of the 4 humans, we were on the brink of falling into blind panic upon the arrival of the warband. I saw hundreds of ships dropping through the rift, and nothing stood between us and them. But just as we could see the fleet setting into motion towards us, a broadcast came from the orbit of Nareen. In rough words, the warband was asked to surrender. What our sensors could also pick up from there were the active signatures of some 40 spaceships. It seems the warband had noticed the same and interpreted it as the local resistance force because they did not hesitate to change course to Nareen. Of course, there was only a single ship there. That fact became apparent when the ruse of the humans broke down, just as the warband had come into close range of the gas planet. We could only watch helplessly as they nonetheless began pelting any larger wreck within the debris field with their heavy ordnance. Then two things happened at once. A massive atmospheric eruption took place on Nareen that ejected numerous megatons of gas towards the fleet of the warband, and we again were blinded by a loss of subspace communication. We did find out the cause of it as our engineers were trying to fix it, a localized subspace interference field that drowned out anything, including the pathfinding of rift engines. This blockage was only part of the defense the humans had set up. The second part revealed itself to us much later, as the light of the happenings near Nareen finally reached us. You see, the battleships of the warband were blocked from fleeing, muted, likely very confused, and caught in a dense cloud of gas. And into their midst, those four humans rode in with their colony ship that was modified far beyond its factory capabilities. For my life, I have never seen a spaceship this massive move this effortlessly. We could only deduce from what we were seeing that they had been using the gas as a transmission medium for some sort of concussive attack. One battleship after the other was knocked out by the colony ship's proximity as it zigzagged through their ranks. But just as we broke out into celebration, a small number of remaining warships recovered from their stupor and opened fire. The base commander paused, but the few seconds of silence remained unbroken. I think I should tell you why the mining mission on Nareen had failed. Amongst the lightweight gases typically found in the upper atmosphere of gas planets, Nareen had a significant amount of volatile compounds brought up by massive stationary hurricanes, compounds that can be accidentally ignited. We saw the whole fleet disappear in what I can only describe as an immense ball of fire. After it receded, we saw the warband barely able to stabilize their tumbling ships because their exterior systems had presumably been partly melted into slag. And the humans? Someone of the 12 stammered. They are fine. We were sent a transmission just when local subspace cleared up. There was a departure through a subspace rift shortly after that, which is a feat that I wouldn't have put past that modified colony ship. So the humans, they are somewhere out there, I guess. How did they do that? The speaker asked tonelessly, and not anyone in particular. How could they stop a warband with a single ship and come out of it alive? Another of the 12 threw in the question, did they truly suffer no casualties? Yes, there were no dead, which is why we will have to make another request for emergency aid. What? Why? The being on the screen waved their arms. Because while we were able to take them in, we cannot possibly accommodate some 3,000 refugees. What are you talking about? The warband, they surrendered. It's why we won? The speaker didn't manage to finish the sentence as they asked. So when you said no casualties? Yes, I was talking about both sides. I am fairly certain the humans were very careful to only use non-lethal means to disable the warships. But we do now have a large number of people here that are begging to stay planetside as they claim to be scared of space. So we need supplies. 2 of the 12 tried and failed to say something, and one other kept staring wordlessly. Finally, the speaker broke the silence and weakly asked, "Can you put us in contact with those humans?" "I think so." The base commander held up a piece of paper into view. In their last transmission, they told us we were to ask them for help if we or someone we knew came under attack again. They gave us a string of numbers that make up this value here. Apparently, that is the key to identifying them within some communication system used on their planet. Did they say anything else in that transmission? Well, they thanked us for the stuff we gave them, and then the group leader said something about having great fondness towards a plan that comes to fruition. I'm not too sure about my translation, though. After an exchange of glances with the other members of the 12, the speaker sat up straight and instructed, "That will be all for now. We need to go over this new information, and we'll most certainly get back to you with more questions. Make sure to compile a full report of the incident in the meantime, and begin to investigate this communication tech of the humans. Consider your supply request granted. It will be dealt with as soon as you hand it in." The base commander made a gesture of understanding, and the view screen flicked off. The historic room remained in silence for a while. I still don't understand, Max said. Nadir 4 is a peaceful planet, Sarge. It's really far away from the bug line. What purpose is there to send a whole division of space marines? We should be focusing on protecting human colonies, not these aliens. You're still young, the sergeant said, exhaling the vape smoke. I'll let you on one secret I've learned over the years, kid. The aliens, all of them, are complete idiots. Huh? Let me explain, Sarge said. Look at your rifle. Tell me what you know about it. Max took a glance at it. He knew it perfectly, of course, same as any other Marine. He could describe its workings in his sleep. Standard issue WLG 900, Nodarian-inspired nucleus, Kurgit-style lance operator, Frenchinese optics, combat AI developed from reprogrammed Xylonics. Precisely, Sarge chuckled. You know what Nodarians think of the Kurgit power lance? Heretic tech. The Kurgit about reprogramming Xylonics? Inconceivable. The Xylonics about Frenchinese optics? Incompatible technology? They all keep making stupid excuses not to study each other. They are so far up their own asses that they took a damn 1,000 years to realize we weren't doing the same as them. Okay. But that still doesn't explain why we're going to Nadir 4. I'm getting there, kid. Now tell me about the conflict between Hive Mind Lambda and the Republic of Shaw in Galactic Cycle F36, U7. Really? Tell me the gist of it. You have studied galactic history, haven't you? It was a rhetorical question, of course. Every kid studies galactic history. Hive Mind Lambda was unaware that Shaw's citizens were individuals in their own right and not expendable drones, Max recited. It thought the Republic wouldn't mind trading a bunch of them to study, but when it learned it had been actually killing people, it was horrified. Peace was reached soon after, and Lambda accepted all responsibility, and to date, it's still working on reparations. You want to know what the citizens of Shaw know about the conflict? Sarge was grinning in an uncanny way. They say Hive Mind Lambda is a horrible monster we cannot possibly comprehend, and without human strange telepathy magic, it would have consumed us all. Instead, now it serves our every desire forever. What? Max shook his head in confusion. But the Human Alliance didn't do any magic. It's just like basic xenopsychology. Lambda is so vast and ancient that it really doesn't care spending F8 cycles serving the Republic. It's for it like an afternoon washing their car. Precisely. Now you know our secret strange power and our true superweapon, basic fucking common sense. The xenopsychologists in the spy service have been studying the imports and exports from Nadir 4, which mind you is open knowledge to everyone, and have determined with an 80% certainty that they are accumulating weapons to attack us. This will be the, I think, 7th time we stop a war before it even begins. The aliens have no idea how we do this. They think we're psychic or something. Idiots, I tell you. Captain's log date, Echelon 12th, GSY 5112 location, Galactic Trade Hub Pohir. Today marks the day that our crew member Grand Warg Valhisi Fontarshipu, rank EC, departs our ship and crew. We held a great celebration in the mess hall that lasted well into 3rd shift. As we were docked, I let the crew enjoy themselves after our last cargo run. I should report runs. A conflict erupted in the Unaya Nebula, and we were contracted to run supplies in and broken equipment out, which necessitated multiple stops across the sector to deliver it all. The pay was enough that we are finally replacing engine number 4 and upgrading our reactor to the latest model. With Grand departing, we put an ad out for a new crew member. Only one applied, a human by the name of Sid Davies. We've all heard the stories of how unpredictable humans can be, but treat them right, and they'll be some of the hardest workers you'd ever encounter. Starting tomorrow, we will welcome Sid Davies as our newest crew member with the junior rank of UBI. As advertised, upon the successful completion of 5 runs, he will be eligible to gain the rank of EB. Captain's log date, Echelon 13th, GSY 5112. Location, Galactic Trade Hub, Pohir. We've welcomed Sid Davies to the crew. It appears he has taken galactic culture training as he never bared his teeth in what humans call a smile. It helped ingratiate him to the crew. I look forward to evaluating his performance in the coming months. As the Dondalas is in dry dock for repairs and upgrades, I have given Sid Davies the necessary files to learn about our ship and its crew. Captain's log date Fanchelon 16th, GSY 5112. Location interstellar space. Sid Davies is proving to be an asset. He familiarized himself with the files provided and appears to have earned the trust of the crew. His work is exemplary, as expected of all crew members. He still maintains property cultural awareness, not wanting to cause any incident. I'm beginning to suspect the stories were just that, stories. Though crew member Aquindar, rank Aussie, seems to have bought into the stories more than the others. She is a millennia, a species from a high-gravity world with a rock-like exoskeleton. Their culture is one to test the grit of new people, intentionally insulting or otherwise provoking them until they reach their breaking point and retaliate in some way. I made sure to highlight this in the files I sent Sid Davies. So far, he handling her provocations far better than I expected of a human. Time will tell. Captain's log date, Fanchalon 28th, GSY 5112. Location, Supply Depot, Surrent. We had a lead that Supply Depot Surrent had more contracts than they could fulfill. Looking over the list, we could keep busy for the remainder of the year doing multiple runs between here and the Unlia Nebula. Aquindar continues to provoke Sid Davies, refusing to render proper respect to him until he proves his grit. Sid continues to ignore her provocations and continues to perform his duties, though there was an odd anomaly in Aquindar's quarters this morning. Millennia require high temperatures in their quarters to maintain health. For unexplained reasons, the temperature dropped more than 20 JIDs. Not enough to endanger her, but a cause for concern. An investigation turned up no explanation. I ordered a backup circuit installed in case it happens again. Captain's log, date Gretchelin 2nd, GSY 5112. Location navigation point 887514. Today we dropped out of FTL for routine maintenance and to orient the ship onto the proper flight path, all system nominal, and the crew continues to perform at or above expectations. Aquindar continues to provoke Sid, who continues to ignore her attempts to upset him. No other crew member has gone this long without retaliation against Aquindar. Either humans have exceptional patience or Sid is a rare specimen. I want to believe both are true, but I fear that Sid may reach a breaking point soon and retaliate. I fear for his life, for he is squishy and lacks weaponry of any sort. I will continue to monitor the situation. Captain's log date, Gretchelin 9th, GSY 5112. Location, FTL. Last night, when Aquindar retired for the evening, she found the grav playing in her quarters, reversed. She is unharmed but upset that she had to spend the night sleeping on the ceiling. This time, an investigation showed that a component in the grav system had failed in an unusual manner, reversing the polarity. Installing a new one fixed the issue. Captain's log date, Gretchelon 14th, GSY 5112. Location, FTL. We are 2 days out from a staging base just outside of the Unlia Nebula. Aquindar awoke this morning to the environmental controls once again malfunctioning. This time, the humidity in her quarters was set to the maximum setting. Millennia worlds are ferociously dry worlds. While the humidity posed no threat to Aquindar, it was yet another annoyance. It is odd that these malfunctions are focused on her quarter specifically. I suspect that Sid is behind these malfunctions as retaliation for Aquindar's provocations, but there is no evidence that supports my theory. I asked Sid about it directly, wanting to get to the bottom of the issue. His explanation was sound, how her quarters had the most extreme environment on the ship, and the upgrades we made may have not fully taken into account the stress of her quarters. He offered to work with our engineer, Blinley Esterfui, rank UBI, to install a buffer to prevent any more failures. Captain's log date, Hatchin 20th, GSY 5112. Location, Supply Depot, Surrent. The rest of our run was uneventful. No more of failures, and Aquindar seems to have accepted she will never see Sid's grit and has backed off on her provocations. We are loading cargo for the next run. Captain's log date, Indechelon 6th, GSY 5112. Location, Supply Depot, Surrent. I render apologies for not maintaining my log regularly. The second run was highly eventful, and I have spent much of my time trying to handle it. This is a warning to my fellow captains. The stories about humans are true. Their cleverness knows no bounds. Do not let a Miniere or anyone else provoke them. On our second run, Aquindar increased her provocations, invoking slurs and began messing with Sid's personal belongings. Sid did all he could to prevent her from doing too much damage, but when she destroyed his supply of stimulant, coffee, Sid didn't erupt in anger as expected. He told Aquindar to apologize, and she refused with a few more slurs. Sid only nodded and issued a statement that sent chills throughout my nervous system. Remember, what comes next is only happening because you brought it upon yourself. He never attacked her, never laid a squishy finger on her hardened carapace. No, he somehow programmed the ship's computer to randomly change the gravity of whichever grav plate she was on, so long as she was the only one on it. 1 second, Aquindar would be fine. The next, she could be a pile of rocks on the floor or floating on the ceiling. Once she was caught so off guard, she spent an entire shift helplessly floating in a corridor since she could not reach a bulkhead to propel herself off of. When that ugly bit was cleared out from the ship's computers, his next offense was to cause all the hatches to either not respond to her or to capture her and not let her move. This only incensed her to more provocations, almost constant. I had to change the duty roster to keep the two from working together, but it was too late. They continued their feud in the off hours. Somehow, Sid found out that Miniere are terrified of simple worms. It has to do with a parasite from their homeworld that nearly wiped out their species. Sid used our fabricators to construct mechanical worms by the thousands and planted them all over the ship. No matter where Aquindar went, these worms would appear. One time, a group of them fell upon her head. In her panic to clear them off, she destroyed an entire corridor and nearly broke an emergency airlock in her haste to banish them to the void. Sid was reprimanded with paying for the cost of repairs and was ordered to collect and destroy the worms. I asked Aquindar if she has finally realized Sid's grit, and if so, to acknowledge it and apologize. She refused. Sid visited many similar actions upon Aquindar, being sure to minimize impact on the crew and the ship. Aquindar finally acknowledged Sid's grit after he retaliated against her foray into his quarters, where she destroyed many of his personal belongings. I reprimanded her for her actions by confining her to quarters and docking 1 Shallan's pay, but it was too late. Sid programmed the displays in her quarters to play some choice music from his culture. As my fellow captains know, much of their music is intolerable to many galactic species, but this music was chosen because the harmonies matched the Miniere physiology, causing a resonant frequency within Aquindar's carapace. This caused her to prematurely molt, losing her rock-like exterior. Aquindar finally acknowledged Sid's grit after that, and we had peace. Despite all this, Sid maintained positive relations with the rest of the crew and continued to perform his duties. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask him to leave. The crew are terrified of him and threatened to leave the ship if Sid remained, or I hired another human. You have been warned.